We're talking with Randy Gelispie, one of the greatest drummers, unsung heroes, my musical father, the musical father of so many different instruments. Welcome, Randy Gelispie.
Thank you very much, Bill. You know, I always call Wild Bill. You know, I don't know why I started calling him, but anyway, I used to call him that Wild Bill. Thank you.
Well, we've known each other 52 years. I first saw Randy Gelispie perform at Count Basie's with Gene Ludwig and Jerry Byrd back in 1967, and then later realized he lived in my hometown of Pittsburgh. And then we worked together with a great guitar player named Jerry Byrd, who's now in Thailand and has been there for a good while. So we go way back. A lot of recordings. We'll get to all of that. But what I want to do, Randy, is start off at the best place, the beginning. You were born in Kent, Ohio in May of 1936.
35.
35, meaning that you are a mere 84 years old, and everybody will agree, drum-wise, brain-wise, soul-wise, you're at the top of your game. Tell us about your early years in Kent. Were your parents musical? Did you inherit any kind of musical talent from your mom or dad or relatives?
Well, I don't think so. I think I saw my dad play on the piano one time, and I was too young to realize what he was playing, but that was the only time, and then I don't know, I might have been 6 or 7 years old.
Now, growing up in Kent back in the late 30s, I mean, this is actually, well, of course, by the time you were aware of music, it would have probably been, what, during the Second World War era, at age 9, 10, back in then, mid-40s, would you say?
Yeah, I grew up in Akron, Ohio.
Oh, that's right. You grew up in Akron. I remember you telling me that.
Yeah.
And thus, you grew up in the real pioneer heyday of the Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie and Max Roach and all these bad cats, the heyday of the invention of bebop. That was probably the first hip music you heard, would you say? Or rhythm and blues, or both?
Both.
Tell me about some of the first groups that you heard, and of course names that we would know, Bud Powell and Charlie Parker. Did you see those people? Did you get to meet them at a young age, 10, 11, 12 years old?
I got a chance to meet Bud Powell, but I was older then. You know, I was grown then. When I say grown, I was I don't know. I must have been 18, maybe, when I saw Bud Powell in Canton, Ohio.
Oh, in Canton.
Yeah, they were at a concert there.
Can you remember who was in his group, and did you get to meet him?
Roy Haynes was in this group.
No kidding.
I can't remember the bass player. Roy Haynes was in this group. And I had been playing then for a while. You know, I started playing in ninth grade.
Ninth grade, which means you were 14, which would be roughly 1949. Can you remember, as best as you can remember, your first gigs? With who? What kind of material you were playing? Where? What kind of joints? What kind of money? What kind of, tell us stories about such things.
Man, I don't remember all the money stuff, but I remember one of my first professional gigs was with Mr. Carson had a band. He had about a 10-piece band, and I first started playing with him. I was in the ninth grade, and I started playing with a 10-piece band. And it was pretty much stock arrangements, you know, the In the Mood and Satin Down, all that kind of stuff, you know. And his daughter sang with the band, you know. She was grown. She sang with the band. That was one of the first gigs I had, professional.
I remember you telling me about your purchase of your first drum set. Were you, I think you saw drums at a music store window or something on that order? Tell us about that.
No. That was when I was 4 years old.
Well, let's rewind a little further and let's go back to a 4-year-old Randy Gelispie.
I walked away from...
Can you imagine the cuteness of a 4-year-old Randy Gelispie?
I was living on Hickory Street. We were. And I decided I wanted to see the drums in the music store window, which I had been up there with my mother and father before, you know, in uptown in Akron on Howard Street, 1 block over from Main Street. And summertime, I decided to walk up and look at the drums in the music store window at 4 years old. So I walked uptown, up Hickory Street, did a little jog to North Street, walked down North Street to Howard Street, and walked up Howard Street Hill, crossed intersection in Market Street. Ross Music Store was in the middle of the block. So I went and looked at the drums in the window. I don't remember how long I was there, and I was on my way back home when my father and another guy jumped out of the car because they was coming up Howard Street Hill. Of course, you know, the police and everybody was looking for me, grandparents and all that. The whole family.
Because you wandered away from home.
Yeah.
A little 4-year-old looking at a drum set.
Yeah.
Very deep.
Yeah. I didn't have no drums, but I wanted.
But had you heard any music at that point? I mean, on the radio, you probably heard whatever the hits were of that day.
Yeah, they played music, at 4. You hear music, but you don't really pay attention to that at 4 years old. You just hear it.
But yet, when you saw this drum set at age 4, did that inspire you to think like, someday I want to be a drummer?
No.
It didn't. It was just something.
But I know
it
I
could have
liked
been a
the drum.
saxophone or clarinet. You mean?
No,
or,
it was the drums.
It was the drums. It was meant to be.
I looked at the drums. I didn't look at nothing else but the drums.
That is so deep. And your first professional gig, I think you told me once when you were age, what, 13, 14?
Right there, something like that. 14, whatever, ninth grade, whatever, that is the ninth. I remember being in ninth grade, yeah.
When you first came up, because a lot of the old timers, I mean, great players, Wynton Kelly, John Coltrane, Eddie Cleanhead, Vince, the list goes on and on, came up through the blues bands. Did your early gigs, were they with blues guys, just singing the blues, like Wynonie Harris, Roy Brown, Jimmy Witherspoon? Did you know these people? Did you hear their music?
I heard them, we had the good music came on Friday and Saturday nights. Randy Record Shop from, I think it was Nashville.
Gallatin, Tennessee, I remember it well.
They come on
WLAC.
Friday and Saturday nights. That's where you heard, In the daytime, you heard what they consider commercial music. You know? But it was good music.
Yeah.
It wasn't, good music. Matter of fact, when I was coming, Elvis Presley, some of the stations didn't want to play Elvis Presley because they figured it was below their standard.
Yeah, it was controversial with wiggling his hips and all that on the Ed Sullivan Show. I do remember that as in my misguided youth. But tell me about the first groups you ever worked with. Were they blues bands, jazz bands, so like the dance band type thing you were talking about?
They were just musicians. Back when I come up, there wasn't no such thing as jazz musicians or rock musicians. They were just musicians.
Yeah, just guys that try to learn everything.
Whatever they did call for, that's what you played, Only the people kind of like call them what they thought they were, because the same people played all the music.
Yeah.
If they wanted to dance at the Elks or something, you shuffle all night long and play backbeat, boom, boom, boom. But when you're playing in the clubs where they wasn't dancing, you try to play straight ahead, without, so they could, they sit down and listen.
Now, as far as what we consider like jazz gigs, bebop gigs, which is, as you know, the hardest music there is to play when you hear guys like Max Roach and Art Blakey and Kenny Clark and those pioneer cats. When did you first start getting into that type of thing? Early 50s, would you think?
Ninth grade. I won't pass up the 9th, 10th grade. It's because the people I was playing with in the clubs, sometimes the age difference was like maybe, ninth grade was like 10 years older, 7 to 10 years older. Other guys were older, a little older. Like the other guys, I played with a piano player, they call him B Natural Fats. I call him Mr. Fats. Of course, I'm not, but B Natural Fats, because he played everything in B natural.
In B?
B, that's why they call him B Natural Fats.
That is.
The older guys, I call him Mr.
So he can play something like rhythm changes in B, but maybe not in B flat. What an unusual person.
Then, once I got older, I realized, wow, that ain't easy. To play everything in B natural. All the songs he knew, he played in B natural. That's why they call him B Natural Fats.
That is deep.
And I say, wow. Once I got older, I said, whoa, that's kind of tricky.
When you first heard those guys like that I mentioned, Blakey and Max Roach and Kenny Clark, the early bebop guys, naturally you probably said like, whoa, baby, I want to learn this stuff. Can you remember, like, how often did you practice? Did you, like, do the old woodshed thing, as they say, and lock yourself in a room and say, man, I've got to learn this, I got to listen? Did you learn from records? Did you learn from just playing out?
Just playing out. I learned on the job. But I played in the Sanctified Church for years before I played in the clubs.
Yeah, and that's the big difference of the old timers.
Yeah.
Coming up through the church.
The guys in the Sanctified Church was just as bad as some of the cats that was in the club. I can
imagine.
I mean, with the flightiness of the bebop concept, with church songs, but with the flightiness and the concept was just unbelievable. And that's happening today, right as we speak. Danny Wilson, the guitarist, Danny Wilson.
From Cleveland?
From Akron.
Oh, okay, yeah.
He come out of the same church in the same town.
That is deep.
And and he playing like boom, 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 boom. I
Well, you probably remember that era when Ray Charles was doing that. I Got a Woman and that. The people in the church were like outraged. Like, what are you're playing like secular music? You're talking about girls and love and all this stuff, and you're leaving God out of the equation. Do you remember the controversy of that?
Oh yeah, they always said that was the devil's music.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah. If you play B flat in the church, you cool. If you play it out of the church, that's the devil's music. Come on.
That's an excellent quote.
And the Bible says, rejoice with the cymbals. What are you going to do?
That's true. Whether it's the Sanctified Church or Elvin Jones and everything in between.
That's the church. I come out of Sanctified Church.
Can you remember, now I'm going to try to move into the mid-'50s eras, the first jazz type cats that we would know, the name guys, because I know you've worked with so many marquee name people. Can you recall some of the first ones?
Oh, gee.
And what year would that be? Because I know you were with Gene Ludwig, that's later, the organ player, but that would have been early 1960s, mid-'60s when we first met.
Yeah, but I had worked with Abby Lincoln.
Is that right?
Yeah, before that, when she was dating Max, I worked before I went out with Gene and Dinah Washington at the Chatterbox in Cleveland. Because I was going back and forth to Cleveland, working with people, and before I went out, I had no intentions of going on the road, for the one thing, because I was working with super bad cats without traveling 5-6 nights a week. It was really a good time because you had the rubber factories in Akron, you had the steel mills in Cleveland, so it was plenty of work.
Yeah.
So clubs were open, all the time, and musicians, man, it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 clubs within a block and a half of nothing but live music, local cats. Akron didn't have what they call, when out of town people came to Akron, they came to the Palace Theater or the Akron Armory. Palace Theater, they were there maybe for a week. That was a movie, but they had shows. But the Akron Armory, they came there for one night. I remember seeing Sonny Stitt and Gene Ammons there at the Akron Armory, and they had a rhythm section and 4 horns at the Akron Armory, and they had a drummer with a snare drum and a bass drum and one ride cymbal and hi-hats, and man, he'd play you under the table. I was so impressed, and never in my wildest dreams did I ever think I would be traveling with Sonny Stitt and playing with Gene Ammons at the same time. At that point, I don't know, I was about 16, 17 years old.
How often did you work with Dinah Washington? She's a great blues singer and everything
I did a
else.
couple of gigs with her because I didn't want to travel.
Yeah.
I had no intention to want to go on the road. I want to stay. I'm playing 5-6 nights at home.
Yeah,
I didn't want to travel.
With bad cats. Well, you remember Gene Barr? Remember Gene Barr? He was an actor
Gene
guy.
Barr.
He was
Daddy
a good
B,
character.
Yeah.
And I remember you telling me you worked with Ray Charles. Tell me about that.
Oh no, I didn't work with him. I subbed in his band in Akron when the drummer got sick.
Okay, well,
I was
that's
16.
official.
I was 16 years old then.
And I remember too, you telling me about, because I asked you, like, when Ray would play those insanely slow tempos, how you would deal with that. And I remember your explanation. Tell me about that again. When Ray would play that just insanely, like one bar would take a half an hour. Tell me about that.
Well, Edgar Willis, who was the bass player on the gig from Pittsburgh, he told me, all right, young blood, you'll be all right. Just watch Ray. Don't worry about it. You watch. Well, I'm 16 years old. I'm at home. What the hell? I care. I ain't traveling on the road. I didn't have sense enough to be afraid then. It was years later when I was out on the road, I heard these horror stories about Ray Charles and drummers. That's when I got shaky. I've been out.
But at age 16, it was.
Age 16, what did I care?
But did he do those hideously slow tempos?
Yes. But this is what you had to do.
This is what I want to hear.
You had to anticipate without fully committing with the time. Does that make sense?
In a way, but I can't, not being a drummer, I can't envision that. But
you had to anticipate And when he dropped the head,
Oh, I
then
see
you
what you mean.
boom, you dropped
Yeah.
it with him.
It's almost like the Etta Jones singing method, where you're like a part of. You imply that you're behind the beat, but you really aren't. Is that the idea?
I work with Etta too.
Oh, wasn't she great?
Oh, she
Most
was great.
underrated singer and such a
you're right.
beautiful person.
You're absolutely
I mean,
right.
Etta and all those, the Irene Reed, Lorez Alexander, Gloria Coleman. Did you know those
I
women?
worked
They
with
were
Lorez.
just- She was
Irene
unbelievably
Reed.
great.
I worked with her. You know, Lorez was beautiful. Yeah, she had Gildo Mahone's playing piano when she come to. Matter of fact, she come to Pittsburgh.
I remember that. Was it at the Diplomat?
Yeah,
Wasn't it the
I
Diplomat?
worked
Because
with her
we
at
had
the
a house
Diplomat.
gig at the Diplomat.
Yeah.
You and me and Jerry Bird. And then, of course, you got to tell the New Year's Eve story. We were at the Diplomat. It was a regular 4-night-a-week gig. I had my organ there. I think I had a C3
that
at
was
the
a
time.
good gig.
That was a good gig. The acoustics were nice. I wish we could have recorded. Well, I did record some of the stuff, but it was so embarrassing. I think I deleted it. Because I remember in the early years of working with Randy, I'll never forget this story. We worked at some dump on the north side in Manchester. It was one of those odd places where they had a B3 with leopard skin on the outside. You know that nutty stuff you see in those joints. And Randy's playing 4s and 8s, and he's doing all this slick Tony Williams kind of stuff, and it's really laughing at me. And I'm just this greenhorn guy that never worked with a heavyweight like him. And I would even release, organ players will know what I'm talking about, I would release the bottom octave and play a bass line during his little segment of a solo. Then quick, pluck, get it back on. Still didn't work. And I said, Randy, I'm so sorry, man. Your 4s and 8s, you're just playing this deep stuff. I just can't. And I remember your exact words were, you just have to go. But then later I learned the way you solo, when you do what I call like round the horn, like Gene Alley to Bill Mazeroski to Don Clendenin, the round the horn, it's like musical notes. When you're playing that, I'm hearing like the 12-tone music system that way. I say, but I mean, not that it's perfect. It's still going to laugh at me on occasion. And if you're sitting with us tonight, I'm sure I'll throw a pitch in the dirt or miss a field goal. but I just remember that was just, and I remember you telling me that Gene Ludwig, the organ player, adept as he was chops-wise, he just never really was able to pull that off.
He wasn't comfortable with that.
Yeah.
And I know what his problem was. The reason why he wasn't comfortable with that, because once he stopped playing, he would drop the beat. He could never keep on top of the beat while he wasn't playing. And that was his problem. Once he stopped, he didn't never.
Yeah.
And he didn't keep the edge.
Yeah.
And it's just a lot of people like that. But now, this is what he could have done. Hindsight is 20/20. Had a bass player, who used to do this all the time. Wherever you would stop at, he would do the boom, dum, 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 dum.
Oh yeah, you get that little.
Dum,
what do you
dum,
call
dum,
that little pickup?
whenever you used to bang,
Gene
he
was
said,
an organ
dum,
player.
dum, dum.
He didn't
would
have
give
the
you that.
luxury of the bass.
So he was never late. Because
Yeah.
he gonna let you go bam, and he said, boom, 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 boom. That way. And Gene could have done that, but he was still, so.
But see, guys like you, Billy James, Joe Dukes, these are some of the greatest organ drummers that ever lived, and of course Elvin Jones, and of course Max Roach, Art Blakey, these pocket drummers that are like a locomotive. You guys, when you solo, there's always that or whatever, and it's like musical notes. If you think of it that way, I don't know if Gene was capable of it, because he didn't really play official bebop licks. He played fast, but they were kind of like unearned finger wiggling scales or something. I don't know what they were, but they weren't like Don Patterson. You know how Don would play those 8 notes, and he would play official bebop licks.
If you tell me, the form is AABA, okay, but I also want to hear the changes, because that's what I listen for. The changes. That's what when I play, I be listening for the changes. Because when I come up under those old guys, there was like, well, they got real. When I got older, the margin of people was like 10 years older instead of 20, 25 years older. Well, what happened with the 25 years, they would make me hum the melody of the song.
The actual melody, that's deep.
Because they said, if you're playing the song, if you get off, you won't get lost because you're playing the song. The rhythm going to take care of itself, but you're going to play the song. So with that in mind, that's what I listen to, changes all the time. And that carries me through, you know, the changes. I hear the changes, that's what I play off of, the changes. You know, the rhythm takes care of itself, but you know, I want to hear the changes. I know, what's his name? Charles McPherson wrote this tune, Horizons. Well, in the head, it's got 4 bars of 3 in the head. It's 4/4, but it's got 4 bars of 3. And Donald Walden, he just started playing it. He said, and you'll hear it. What do you mean? You hear it? You got 4 bars of 3 in the head, and I'll hear it. But what I did, I listened to the change leading me into the 3, and I got it.
Okay, so Randy, for the most part, probably during most of the 1950s, you probably stayed in that Northeast Ohio pocket for the most part, right? Just working with those cats there.
Akron, man, because, you know, there wasn't no need for me to go on the road. Ike Isaac, you know who he is?
Yeah, the bass player.
Yeah, Ike Isaac tried to get me to go out on the road with, well, actually, with Lambert, Sanders, and Ross.
Oh,
He was the trio behind that.
That's right, he was the guy.
Yeah, he tried to get me to go out. What am I going out on the road for? I'm working 5-6 nights with bad cats.
Yeah,
What am I
you
going
got a point
to
there.
leave home for? No, I ain't messing with that, man. You know, I might want to play baseball on Sunday.
Tell me about the first marquee name guy. I'm thinking Wes Montgomery that you worked with. Did you travel with Wes, or was that mostly?
I traveled with Wes.
Who else was in the band? Can you recall?
His brothers.
Oh,
And there was a saxophone player by the name of Wayman Atkinson. We call him Punchy.
Punchy.
You wouldn't know him. He was a bad cat. He's from Akron, but he was traveling with Wes at the time. I was in Indianapolis traveling with Joe Alexander, one of the greatest tenor players
I remember
ever
him. Yeah,
lived.
he is a bad cat. Not many people
One
know
of the
about him.
greatest. Matter of fact, I got some material that says the young John Coltrane was influenced by Joe Alexander.
Is that right?
Yeah, I got it. You
That is
know,
deep.
because Joe was. I got the thing that said I got it. You can pull it up if you want to. Rip Bivens was the club owner of this in Cleveland, and he got a flyer says that 500. This is back in the 50s, 60s. Got a flyer says that $500 reward for anybody that can outblow sax man Joe Alexander. They got it
Like a contest. That's
in
great.
Cleveland at the Shangri-La. That was his club, and it's up there, man. In the picture
Isn't
of
that
Joe.
deep?
I mean, Joe was. I got the thing where he was in the Woody Herman band for a while. The guy said when Joe stood up to take a solo, he swung the whole band.
Is that right?
Man, I'm telling you, this cat was unbelievable, Bill.
Wow.
Unbelievable, Joe Alexander.
How
But that's
long-
who I was traveling with in Indianapolis at this club called the Topper Club. And the first set we were playing, and Wes came in, who I didn't know, had never met. And after the first set, Joe knew him. Joe said, "Hey, Randy, come over here and meet Wes Montgomery." And so I went over and I sat down in the booth and went and met him. "Hey, how you doing?" Shook hands and everything. About 15 minutes later, Wes said to me, "How would you like to join my band?" Just like that.
Wow.
And he said, "I got to be honest with you, we was trying to get this cat out of Akron, Ohio, who Punchy, who was with the band, had told him about me." And I told him, I said, "Oh, really?" I said, "Well, I'm from Akron." He said, "You are?" I said, "Yeah, I'm from Akron." He gets up, goes to the payphone, and calls Punchy to find out the name of the guy he wanted him to get.
Yeah.
And Punchy told him, his name is Randy Gelispie, but I called his house, he out with somebody.
Oh, okay.
And I
So
was
you were
out
the
with
guy.
Joe. Yeah.
That is deep.
And I was kind of like destined to get that gig.
Well, that's been around what, 1960, 61?
That was 59, 60, something
59,
like
so
that.
you'd have been roughly
'Cause
20, 24, 25 years old then.
Yeah, whatever.
Mid-twenties.
Yeah, but that was the first gig was. This was in December. The first gig was January the 4th at the Southern Allowance.
Wow, you remember the date. How is it that you can be 84 years old and remember such things? I don't remember what the hell I did yesterday. This is astounding. So how long
And
were
I
you
can
with...
remember the tune we played.
Oh. And it was?
Joy Spring.
Was there... Oh, isn't that deep? All right, I'm gonna ratchet this up. Was there an intro? Did somebody do a pedal 5, 3/6 5?
No, they just counted off.
Right on it. Right on it. Tied a tin can to my tail again. So how long were you with Wes? This is 59, 60?
About a year and a half, something like that.
Never went overseas.
He got sick. He started getting sick, and so he had to take some time off. And then what did I do? I think I started freelancing, and Wes found out, he had bad heart. Had some heart issues. That was what was happening.
And he was young too. Then.
Yeah,
I mean,
and then when he come back out, he come out with those big band recordings.
Yeah,
on
the
Verve,
stuff on
Verve and
A&M records. Yes,
and
that'd be mid late 60s.
So what happened though? The years later, I was in Columbus, Ohio, playing at the club, and he came through on a one-nighter with Wes Montgomery and what is that singer? Oh, what was her name? It was a lady singer that was real popular then. Anyway, I went over to the auditorium to see him, and this is after he got them Sonny and going on in my head and all that stuff that hey, boom 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 boom, and so I went over to see him. Monk and Buddy was in the band, and they had a conga player named Bunyan who played congas with the band, and Billy Hart was playing drums for him.
Oh, is that right? Billy Hart, yeah.
So once I went over to see him, and he said, hey man, what's going on? Blah 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 blah, and he said, listen, Billy Hart's getting ready to leave, man. Say, you see what we're doing, kind of stuff we're doing, man. What about coming back with the band? I said, well, he said, I'll tell you what, I'm gonna be off a week. Call me.
Was this been during the Gene Ludwig era when you were with Gene and Jerry? So that'd be mid-60s because that's right around when we met.
Yeah.
Okay, and you declined apparently. You turned him down?
No, what happened was he died.
That's right, in 68.
Yeah,
he was only 44. And I had a chance to see him at the Hollywood Club of all places. Remember that dump we played down there in Clareton, Pennsylvania? We played down there with Jerry. Remember that?
Yeah.
That was the place that had like stairs that went up like the Lincoln Memorial. It was 9 minutes carrying that organ up the stairs. It was total torture.
Matter of fact, you bumped somebody's car.
I foul-tipped the guy's car, and I thought I got away with it. Again, this astounding memory. And we played our first set, and this big, giant Mr. T-looking guy comes up and says, I'm the guy you want to talk to about hitting my car. Baritone voice like Billy Eckstein. I say, you caught me dead to rights. But he was real cool about it. And through a friend of mine up in Carnegie, outside of Pittsburgh, I was able to repair it for, I think we made a mere $30. It cost me $30. So what the hey? I broke even, and the guy didn't kill me. You remember that incident too? You know why that happened? Jerry and I rented a truck, one of those 40 Conno lines with no windows. I was a traveler, and it had no brakes. This thing. I'm going to hit this guy, and I foul-tipped the right side of his car. Oh, the stuff we went through. I mean, we could be here for years and years talking about that. The Braddock incident, the nightcap in the Roses. These places were just hilarious.
The guy staged a fight so he could cancel the band.
Yeah, like we're setting up the organ and everything, and Randy's dinner, putting the little wing nuts in the cymbal, and out of nowhere, this guy says, I'll close the whole bucket down, y'all can go home. And we're thinking like, what is all this commotion going on? But what it was, he staged this argument with this guy because there was no one in there, and he figured, I'm not going to be able to even make the mere $125, whatever I promised his trio, and that was it.
We laughed about it.
That stuff was just hilarious.
Oh, my God.
But anyway, after Gene Ludwig, that's when we hooked up, and we had the band with Jerry Bird because you were based in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I was. Yeah,
and that went on a few years, and I went over with John Leslie, who eventually we did adult films, music soundtracks. We did a total of like 27 of those things, and they were very, very deep.
We just did the music, folks. We didn't look at
the right. Just
we just get a minute here, a minute there. Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah,
we just didn't send them to them. We wasn't there when they was filming. We just did the music.
But we did all kinds of music. We did like shuffles and blues and like even some vicious stuff and Latinisms. We did all kinds of cool stuff.
Billy Hart was overseas, and he saw one of these movies and he saw our names on the liner notes, and he told me when he come back, I said, yeah, Billy, we wasn't there when they was making the movies. No, we just did the music.
So Joey DiFrancesco told me the same thing. It was in Europe, and he saw it, and so did this bass player, Michael Bowie. I mean, these are notoriety official guys. I went to Europe with Johnny Bassett, the blues singer, and people didn't know what blues records I was on, like with Coco Taylor and Fenton Robinson and that. But they knew about those movies. They said, didn't you write movie soundtracks for John Leslie? Because in Europe, they just show that kind of thing on regular TV. They don't have isn't that deep? Like the movie of the week.
Oh my God.
And I remember I got these old beta tapes, and I think I gave them away or sold them real cheap because I never wanted my dear mom to see that because she wouldn't understand. I'd say, hey, Mom, I'm just doing this. This is what I do for a living. You know what I'm saying? And I think you told me the same thing. You didn't want your daughters or granddaughters to see
I
these.
said, hey, man, get this stuff out of here. He said, what is this? Oh, what the? Get out of here.
But we had Scott Peterson and Russ Miller. We had Perry Hughes. We had all these bad cats on these things. And our good buddy Jeff Shoup is little by little archiving all these cassettes. So I'll make sure that I burn you DVDs of them. You can hear. A lot of them are just effects. You might just hear this going on. I don't think you want that. But the actual tunes, there's one, I think it was called Chameleon, where you did this sort of, and you're using the symbol of God. We'll get to that in a moment. This ride cymbal that he had that just absolutely knocked me. I never heard a cymbal this slick, where you're just playing one of these, one of these sambistic Latin things, and it runs through the whole 5 minutes of the film. I mean, it's just very, very deep. But anyway, getting back, then we had our group, you and me and Jerry. And then I split to Michigan and all of that. Now I want to, and ever since then, when did you come to Michigan State, by the way, teaching?
Oh.
That's got to be at least 10, maybe 15 years ago.
Yeah, actually, I think it was 94 maybe.
That's 25 years. Quarter of a century.
But there wasn't a jazz program then. I think it was Peter Dominguez was teaching, bass there. But it wasn't no jazz program. He was teaching bass, and they decided they wanted somebody to kind of teach drum set jazz, but it wasn't no jazz program. So I was just teaching some kids there about the drum set, and it's another. That was then 94, 90. Then I left in 96 because of I lost my wife in 96. That one, and so I left that year. And then I forget, I went back and that next year or the year after, because Rodney come in and they started a jazz program. Yeah. Then he asked me, well, what's the name? Another guy was there teaching. They brought him from Michigan, University of Michigan. What was his name? Anyway, he stayed half a semester and he left and went to New York. Then they had the Latin cat there teaching drum set, and Rodney wanted me to come back and teach, so he hired me to come back and teach.
You've been doing it ever since.
And I've been blessed.
Because I remember you moved here originally working for GM, I think in 1974, was it?
Well, no, I moved here no.
It was right after you and me and Jerry's little thing kind of piddled away.
Okay, I was married then. But I moved there because my wife got sick with lupus.
That's right, it was lupus.
I was already living here then, but I was still out. And then when she got lupus, I couldn't make it work being out and coming back from being out. And so
by then, with the disco thing and after the Martin Luther King assassination, as you recall, those cozy little organ clubs that we loved so much, that all kind of disappeared. The Key Club in Newark, the Lawson's in Harrisburg, remember the Pine Grill in Buffalo and all those joints. You were telling me about a joint in Cincinnati, or it was Columbus, where you'd work like 6 straight weeks, 6 nights a week with Gene. Remember that?
That was the Cadillac Club. Yeah.
Did you ever play the Cadillac Club in Newark? That was very soulful.
I did that too.
Yep.
Yeah.
And right across the street was the Key Club, a little skinny street.
Right up the street.
Wow.
The Cadillac Club. Yeah, it was around the street. But what was it? The front room.
Oh, the front room. I never saw the front room. There was some McDuff albums recorded there.
That was in Newark. Charlie Langston, guy from Pittsburgh. That was a nice club, too.
Oh, before I forget, tell me the story about John Coltrane coming to Wes's gig when you were working with Wes. I think you recalled that you told me about something about that. So you got to meet Coltrane, obviously.
Oh, yeah. I talked to him. was able to talk to him several times, though, you know, just kind of like casual talking to him. And then traveling with Wes, he came in. Now, people don't realize that Wes made a couple of gigs here and there with Train, but Train wanted Wes to join his band.
I have read that, yeah.
But Wes said, oh, man, you know, I can't, you know, he didn't want to get fooled with that direction.
Yeah.
You know, but Train liked the contrast. That's what, you know.
Yeah.
But anyway, I was playing with Wes, and Train said to me, I love your feeling, I love your spirit, you know, and I was, you know, I had Train on the pedestal. I almost didn't know what to say. You know, I you know, thank you, of course, but I was just really, you know, that he would be paying attention, you know. Yeah. We talk, and I'd see him occasionally, you know, and he'd stop and talk to me. What's he doing?
And no doubt you heard his band when they were doing the early 60s, you know, the usual My Favorite Things and you know, Afro Blue, all that cool stuff. That must have been it. And no doubt you met Elvin Jones. Did you get to hang with him, talk to him at all?
Oh, me and Elvin was pretty close, man, when we saw each other. I remember coming out of this hotel at 70th and Columbus, the Walden Hotel, 70th and Columbus. That's where I was staying. And I was going in, and Elvin was coming out, and he stopped and said, hey, come on. He took me back upstairs to his room. This is in the 60s, and showed me this 16-inch bass drum he had in his room. And he hit it, boom, boom, boom. He said, see, that's all you need. That's all you need. You don't need them. You don't need, this all you need. Boom, boom, boom. He was right, because I'm using one right now. 16-inch bass drum, that's all.
That is so
But he wasn't playing that. And I don't think I ever saw him play it.
Isn't that odd?
I never saw him play it, but that's back in say. His drums was always 18 or 20, whatever, but I never saw him play it. But he said, that's all you need. So,
did you ever get a chance to hang or talk to any of the other members of that band? To me, that is like the pinnacle of this music. John Coltrane, McCoy Tyner.
Yeah, McCoy.
I met him
Jimmy
on occasion,
Garrison.
but never really got into any.
Yeah. Matter of fact, we was in Cleveland at the same time, and I was playing with Joe Alexander, and Train was at the club called the what was that called? The Temple. And they didn't start to 12 midnight to 4. So when we get off from the other club, everybody go over there to the Temple. And Train had this drummer that week, and he rode back from the Temple with us back to Skippy's, an all-night restaurant right across the street from the Majestic Hotel. And now, I heard the band, and I thought Clifford Jarvis was taking care of plenty of business. That's who it was.
He's a bad cat. I know.
I thought he was taking care of plenty of business. The band, to me, sounded good. To me, it was McCoy, Jimmy Garrison, and Clifford Jarvis, and they, to me, sounded great. Well, when we get back to Skippy's, we're sitting in the restaurant. Train sitting right next to me. McCoy sitting next to him. Jimmy Garrison, and Joe sitting on the other side, and Train saying, but I got to get something if it ain't nothing but an elephant. That's what he was saying.
His standards were so high that Clifford Jarvis wasn't even up to snuff.
Well, you know, this is the funny thing. This is the funny thing about this music. It sounds good to us, but on the bandstand, it might feel different to who's ever on the bandstand. And Train said to McCoy, says, do you think I should send and get Philly? Talking about Philly Joe Jones. That's what Train said. I'm sitting right next to him. He's sitting there. McCoy say, I don't know. He didn't want to give no, He said, I don't know. He said, Train said, boy, I'd like to get Roy, but he cost me so much money. He talking about Roy Haynes. He said he liked it. So I don't know who they got for the next week because we left town and they left town, but he got somebody called Clifford Jarvis went back to New York. I know he went back to New York. I don't know who Train got, wherever they went. I have no idea. But he was, and I thought he was killing, man. To me, he was killing.
Well, Clifford Jarvis is a bad cat.
Yeah, Clifford Jarvis. I thought he was killing now.
Did you ever get to play with McCoy or Coltrane, just sitting in or whatever?
No.
Never got that in the books?
No, not to get that. I would have loved to.
Tell me about organ players. The big six for my money would be, it's so hard to put them in order. I mean, Jimmy Smith was the first guy who got that sound and that whole concept of the left foot in unison with the left hand on the lower manual and that cute pulling out the 3 bars, the official Jimmy Smith sound. And then you go from Jimmy to Don Patterson with the deep ballads and the bebop, and then McDuff for that bluesy thing and making a 4-piece group sound like a big band, and then Lonnie Smith, Leon Spencer with the funk type thing, and of course Larry Young taking it to a new, and I heard you play with Larry Young on the Crawford Grill.
Right,
and
right,
again,
right.
this is what I wish we had iPhone technology. I got to tape that. And I remember you guys were killing, and Spanky Wilson was on the gig. Remember that? You guys would play a few and call it, and it was like 4 people in the joint. This is the latter days of this music. But anyway, out of all those cats, who did you lock in with the best, would you think, organ-wise?
Man, it's hard
Did
to
you
say.
play with Don and Jimmy and those cats and Lonnie?
Yeah. But it's hard to say. Jimmy swung so hard, though, man. You know, Jimmy swung. Larry Young was, you could tap dance on the drum. It was cool. You know, I mean, it was so loose that you could do anything you wanted. You know?
And I remember you doing that. Yeah, it was
you could
very
do
deep.
Yeah, it was.
What about Don? Did you work with Don at all?
Yeah, I did a week with. Well, I did more than that, but one time I had to do a week because Gene got sick and we was playing opposite Don in Atlantic City. So Don was great. Don was great. You know, I mean, it's just, you know, it's hard to put them in. Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, because all those cats are so different.
And they all played different, but they all were great. You know, Jack didn't have the facilities of a Don Patterson or Jimmy Smith, as far as the lines, you know, but he could swing though.
Oh,
you know?
yeah. And his arrangements were so slick.
Jack used to always say, well, you know, I may not get over the organ like some of them guys, but you put me in G right here. That's what he But you know, Jack had them horn lines. You know, he them lines. He write them lines for them horns.
Yeah, it was like a little big band.
But you know, he was originally a bass player.
I know that, and his name was McDuffie. Did you know that? There was a Y on the end of it.
Yeah, he's out of Champaign, Illinois.
Champaign, Illinois. I have a '78 that he's on with Schoolboy Porter, a tenor player, and it says Jack McDuffie bass. Isn't that deep?
You know, and I also traveled with Screaming Jay Hawkins.
Yeah, tell me about that, because he was great. And no doubt he did his I Got a Spell on You.
No, he was crazy, man. I mean, crazy in a wonderful way, you know. But I was telling the students about this blues he used to sing. And Diego Rivera, the saxophone teacher, told me, there's no song like that. There you kid. I said, yes, it is. It was this song, it was the blues, but the words were like, I got a girl. She can't speak a word. Every time she talks, she say muck the moo, muck the muck moo, muck. That was the blues, and Screaming Jay Hawkins used to sing it on the gig. I'm serious. So I was telling the student, and Diego heard me. Oh, there's no. Well, he went on and he found it.
He found it on YouTube,
it was by Bobby somebody, but it was the same song.
That's deep.
And he heard it. He played that. He said, I will never doubt you again in life.
I remember you told me about Big Maybelle sitting in with you and taking her teeth out and whistling the blues.
That was her gig. She didn't sit in. That was her gig.
Okay. You were working. Was Gene the guy on that?
Yeah, Gene. That was in New York at the club. At the Club Baron.
Blues singer.
At the Club Baron.
I remember the Club Baron.
Yeah, but that was the jazz club. But she was a blues singer, you know. But now, Big Maybelle, I got to say she was a trooper. When I say trooper, she was an entertainer. When she get on the bandstand, she starts singing. She sang 2 or 3 of them blues. Singing Maybelle. That's what the people would be saying. Singing Maybelle. Now, when you figure, she done, yeah, Maybelle. And then when she sing 2 or 3 of them blues, then she sing a hit. All she got to do when she sing all those blueses, she'll start out saying, Candy. Oh my goodness,
yeah,
that was her hit.
Yeah,
people say Maybelle, say Maybelle. Oh, so I told Jerry, man, you think she can walk on water? Because people. Now, when she sing that Candy, oh man, that was a hit. When you think there's nothing left for her to do, she would turn around, face the bandstand, take her false teeth out, put them in her bosom, and start whistling the blues. Lord have mercy. Them people would go stone crazy, Bill. I'm serious. They would go stone crazy. We laughed so hard, but Big Maybelle, she was a trooper, man. She had them people eating out of her hand. When she started whistling the blues, after all that singing, man, they would go crazy. Oh, Maybelle.
That's just so deep.
Oh, but you was talking about Coltrane. We followed them in Indianapolis. They was at a club called well, it was a Pink Poodle, but they changed it to the Count, Shaw, and Eve.
And this is the regular group, Garrison and McCoy and Elvin. Right?
Yeah. So we got in there a day early. So we went, got there and sit down. And the club owner said, said to Train, says, I wish you would have played some of the songs that they identify you with. Like, my favorite things, those songs, And so Coltrane told him in a soft voice, real soft voice, he said, "Oh, I'm just trying to find myself." And I said, "Oh my goodness." He's trying to find himself after all that beautiful music he played all those years. He's still looking for himself. Yeah. I said, "Boy, what chance do we have?" If he done played all that stuff. That was his words. Well,
you remember, of course, A Love Supreme to me was like the pinnacle. Because it had everything. You had a minor blues in there, you had a major blues, you had this Latin set. It was so deep. But once he lost form, when he got into Ascension, Om, Meditation, that stuff was, even for me, and I'm pretty nutty. No. How did you react to that?
He lost me after the first bar.
Yeah.
And he lost Wes, too. Wes said the same thing. He was.
Can you remember how other guys back then, did you run into these people like Wayne Shorter, Joe Henderson, Azar? I mean, they were influenced so much by Coltrane. What did they think once Train just completely took it out and started doing that nutty stuff?
I never asked them.
Yeah, I guess they don't want to talk against, they don't want to talk against a fellow brother and a musician.
I worked with Joe since I've been off the road. I had worked with Joe.
Oh yeah, tell me the Joe Henderson story of let's not think about the past.
Say what?
The story you told me about Joe Henderson when he agreed on X amount of dollars for some concert gig or whatever.
Well, that was Rodney was on the gig.
Yeah, this is a Michigan State thing. Please.
No. It was Rodney. Rodney wasn't working at Michigan State. He was on the road freelance, and he was working. And we record. And Joe had agreed to record for X amount of dollars. And he didn't show up at the recording studio. And so, they called the manager, "Hey, where's Joe at?" And the manager said, "Well, Joe said, you need a little more money, blah, blah." I said, "Wait a minute." I said, "Joe, you agreed for this, that." And Rodney said, Joe told him, let's not dwell in the past.
No, there's another great story, and I have it in the books when you and me and Don Walden and Paul Keller played a gig back in the 80s. It's the time that Grant Green almost sat on Buddha on a Sonny Rollins gig. Please recount that, because that is truly a...
This was in Buffalo, and we were all in town at different clubs. Grant Green was playing with Sonny Rollins at the Royal Arms. We were playing at the Bonton. Johnny Latta was playing at the Crawford Grill, but we all staying at the Marquine Hotel. All of us staying at the same place, which is couple. You go around the circle, but in a couple blocks, you can check all the clubs out. It was just like a couple of blocks from each other.
In Buffalo, of all places.
Yeah,
wow.
and so Johnny Latta was a camera buff. He liked to take pictures. So I come down to the lobby. Grant sitting in the lobby, and Johnny Latta. So I spoke to Grant. So Johnny said, "Anybody seen Sonny?" I said, "No." He said, "I wonder if he let me take some pictures." I said, "Well, see if he's in his room." So he called on the house phone and called up there. The Sonny's in his room. And he asked him, could he come up and take some pictures with me and Grant? He says, "Yeah." He told him on the phone, "Come on up." So when we go up there, he knock on the door. Sonny opened the door. "Yeah, come on in." And Grant Green just ready to sit in this big easy chair. And he started to sit down, and Sonny says, No, don't sit there, don't sit there. He says, "Someone is sitting there." And Grant, I said to myself, "Ooh, buddy, gee, I want to scream, but I didn't want." He said, "Buddha is sitting there. There's nobody sitting in the chair." I want to howl, I want to scream, but I didn't want to laugh at his religion, whatever. Oh my goodness! And Grant is caught bending over, like getting ready to sit down. And Grant turns around and looks at the Ain't nothing there. He looks at Sonny. Then he looks at me. I want to scream. I want to holler. I said, I forgot. I got to get some drumsticks. I had to get the hell out of there before I bust out and go to laugh.
That is so deep.
I mean, man, listen. This is the gospel truth, man. That's exactly what happened. Boy, and you know, and Lou Donaldson, I was telling Lou about that because, you know, we did a tour with Lou, and I was telling Lou about that. And Lou said, yeah, one time they were looking for Sonny on the gig, and he didn't show up, and they come to this hotel room, and they went in his room, they looked in the closet, Sonny was sitting there with his legs crossed, meditating. You know, in the hotel, and they waiting on him to come to the gig. That's where they found him. But he said, so Sonny's out, man. I had a former student call me up one time. This was years and years and years later. Called me up and said that he getting ready to audition for Sonny. Is there anything he should know? I said, no, you don't have to know anything. Sonny might hire you because he likes your shirt. So you don't have to know in this play. You don't have to know nothing. There ain't nothing to know. Because Sonny, and everybody Sonny usually has can play. I say, so just go play, you know. And if he like it, it won't be about your playing. Probably just be something you got on or how you look or whatever. Because Sonny, you know, because he's always got some bad cats. So I said, just go play. I don't know. I don't think he got the gig, but you know, but he didn't get the gig because he couldn't play. Another reason, you know.
You know, it's funny, Randy, every time we get to hang, there's always another little anecdote or little story you have. And just last week in town, you were telling me about playing with Ron Carter and Tommy Flanagan and how Ron's touch was a little odd for you. Tell me about that.
He was a great bass, just subtle. You know, he played, to me, you know, the way he plays, he's naturally one of the greatest bass players that ever lived as far as playing the bass. But it was a subtle. It felt a lot different than what it sounded if you listen to him when he's playing with somebody else. For me, it was real subtle.
You prefer him like pulling the strings harder, digging in more, like the Ray Brown kind of Paul Chambers kind of thing?
You know, it was everything was correct, but it was still subtle. His feeling was subtle. You know.
Maybe Rudy Van Gelder could compensate for that on those records because he sounds so great on those. So many of those session days.
On records, man. He's a great bass player, but playing with him, for me, it was subtle.
I'm going to go whirl around and think of some of these other great cats, these other geniuses. Herbie Hancock. Did you ever work with Herbie or sit in with him or meet him?
No.
Because you hear so many changes because you came up in the late 40s, and to me it was like an earthquake creating mountains, the way this music just went from the swing era to the blues thing and the rhythm and blues and jump and all that stuff to the doo-wop era and all those great eras to straight ahead bebop and then to the modern stuff, the Coltrane stuff. How did you react to those changes? Like when Coltrane started sort of semi getting out there, like doing those modalisms. Did you like those? Tunji, Miles mode, all that was it? Or was it the early Prestige era that got you with Coltrane? What era of John Coltrane do you like best? Because there's so many.
Well, I liked it all.
Oh, me too. But if there's any one preference, those modal minorisms, Lonnie's Lament, and Crescent.
I liked it all. You know, students asked me one time, what is your favorite song to play? I said, the one I'm playing.
Yeah, that's an impossible question.
Yeah, the one I'm playing is my favorite at the time. That's whatever I'm playing, that's my favorite. You know. So it is. You know, and listen, it's all related. This music is all related in some form or fashion. It's all related. It's the people try to separate it, but it's all related.
Well, naturally, record companies have to label things for genres. Like, well, this is jazz, this is R&B, this is funk, this is blues, this is hard rock, this is country. And that's understandable because you got to package it and market it. But when you say it's all related, how do you mean that?
Okay.
Try to explain that.
All right. Okay. Let's say Santa Claus is coming to town. Let's take that tune. You better watch out. You better not cry. You better watch out, I'm telling you why. Santa Claus is coming to town. Now, everybody understands that, right? You sing it like that, or you play it like that, the melody-wise, you play it like that. But if you play it like this, ba-ba-da-da, ba-ba-da-da.
That's the way you and me and Jerry Bird used to play it.
Ba-ba-da-da. You know, then, so the guy, one guy called me up one time, I was doing an interview on the radio, And he was listening, and I was telling that the disc jockeys sometimes are responsible for what people think is what we consider jazz, the beboppies, you know, the bebop and stuff there. And then you have the Groveristics, we used to call them, and they also call that jazz.
Yeah.
So when the people call in, they think that's jazz because the disc jockey.
Yeah.
So this guy called me up. Well, he called up the station, says he got offended because I said, that's not really what the musicians really consider that as jazz. They really don't call that. It's kind of to the left, but you know, it's all related. I said that.
Yeah.
I offended this guy because he said, well, this music you say is not jazz. Is it bad music? And I told him over the phone, over the mic, he's talking over the phone, but he's calling up the radio station. I said, not once did you ever hear me say it was bad music. I said, it's just not what the musicians consider the straight ahead jazz, the bebop.
Yeah.
So I said, may I ask you a question, sir? He said, yes. I said, if you go into a restaurant and you order prime rib, and the guy brings you a hamburger steak, will you accept it because it's beef? Will you accept it because it's beef? He said, oh, you know, maybe I kind of see what you're saying. I said, good. I said, I love it all, but let's put it where it's supposed to be. You know, kind of. It's all related, but kind of.
And they have to label things. Well, one final thing before we wrap this up. In my opinion, like you take individual instruments in this kind of music that we call jazz, bebop, or McDuff used to call the dirty thing. You know, you take, like, for instance, trumpet players back to Louis Armstrong, Roy Eldridge, those pioneer guys, then, of course, the bebop guys, Dizzy, Fats Navarro, and then you get more modern with Lee Morgan. Then you get those real ultra-modern guys like Freddie Hubbard, Woody Shaw that took it out. And same with drums. You know, go back to whatever, Chick Webb all the way to Elvin Jones. In your opinion, this music, in the general sense, do you think it's expired? Do you think there's a future in it? Do you think, like, when Miles started doing Bitches Brew and that kind of rock funk type of thing, or Chick Corea doing the Return to Forever thing or whatever? I know it's very subjective, but in the general sense of what we regard as bebop, the era that we came up in your opinion, has it expired? Is it over? Or will there be a new Freddie Hubbard that'll take the trumpet beyond where Freddie took it? Or a drummer that'll take it beyond Tony Williams or Elvin? You know what I'm saying? Do you think it's kind of expired? What's your opinion about that?
As long as there's a world, we got a chance.
Well, that's right. I suppose. All right. I guess that'll have to do.
As long as there's a world, we got a chance.
This man is truly my musical father. 52 years.
If the world disappears, then maybe not. But let me say one thing about this music. When I come up, wasn't no such thing as a jazz musician, a rock musician, or this kind of musician. You were just a musician. So if the gig called for you to play Humpty Dumpty, which is, you played that. If you're playing at a country club, you're going to play T for Two all night long. Da, 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 and they're going foxtrot around. It's a country club. You're not going in the country club and play giant steps like Elvin Jones. At the country club, you're going to play for two club. And everybody knew that.
You adapted.
You was a musician, whatever the gig called for, that's what you played. And wasn't no such thing, you're a jazz musician. No. I had this one person said to me, you play jazz, huh? I said, well, some people say, yeah. Well, you play blues too? I say, then that's when I explained to him. I say, when B.B. King sings the blues, usually it's a 12-bar blues, 1-4-5. I say, when Coltrane, Miles Davis, Dizzy Gillespie, when they play a blues, it's a 12-bar blues. Mm-hmm. Oh, really? Uh-huh. It's the same. The melody is different. Probably the key is different, but it's still 1-4-5. It's 12-bar blues. Wow, I didn't know that. No, I guess you didn't. But that's the way it is. But then they take a look at you with a question mark. They still don't understand, but at least they know they got some kind of,
Yeah, I guess in your teaching, I guess you get some odd questions. I mean, I do now and then, but you get.
Well, I get this question.
They mean well for the most part.
I get this question about what is jazz. I get that question.
How do you define that?
I say jazz is a way of playing any song. That's what jazz is.
Yeah.
If you play it this way, we consider this jazz.
Yeah.
You know,
right.
there's no such thing as a jazz tune or this tune. It's the way you play it that makes it jazz.
And I would think one of the great examples, if you remember, is Larry Young, Hank Mobley, Grant Green, and Elvin Jones playing "I Want to Hold Your Hand," one of the silliest songs. And Elvin's playing that little calypso. Or remember Reuben Wilson, the organ player?
Yeah.
He's playing this song by the Turtles. It's like bubblegum music, you know, Happy Together.
Yeah.
But he plays it as a shuffle. And it swings to high heaven, even though the song itself is so silly. But
You remember the stylistics?
oh, of course, yeah.
You should hear David Hazeltine's arrangement on Bet You By Golly Wow.
Oh, I do recall that. Well, I remember Grant's version too, and he just goes on and on with that tag at the end.
Yeah, but what's the name? David Hazeltine arrangement of the Bet You was so slick. Boy, it's ultra slick, man. It is so slick, Bill. It's on this record, I think, All for One, with who's on that? Joe Farnsworth, Eric Alexander, trombonist. It was Steve Wilson, I think. Anyway, David Hazeltine and bass player Kenny Washington, Peter Washington. I forget who's playing trumpet on there. Anyway, it's so slick. You ever heard that?
I haven't heard it.
Oh, you got.
And one final thing, Randy, we have made, in addition to the films, we have made roughly 5 albums for High Note Savant. You remember the one we did with, the first one with E-Dog with Scott Peterson called "This Is My Rifle." We did Bop Rascal with Perry Hughes. We did Wet Streets with Russ Miller and E-Dog.
Yeah.
And then we did 2 with E-Dog and Joe Magdarelli, trumpet.
Yeah, yeah.
And to me, my brother got the official juicy Rudy sound. I remember my brother said that, I wish Randy would move that hi-hat just a smidge, and he would move it, and he'd go back into the other bedroom, because we recorded these things in a little 2-bedroom house outside of Detroit in Allen Park, Michigan. But then you would move it back. It became a little Foghorn Leghorn cartoon type game between you and my brother.
Well, he didn't tell me he was moving it for any reason. I just thought he moved. He didn't never tell me. He never say nothing.
Well, it's a moot point now. But out of all those records, if you can recall any of them, were there any one of them that you dug more than the other ones?
No, they were all
Because
great.
we always had
we all had a
great
good time. They were all
times, man.
great,
I mean,
yeah.
the music that I have had the honor of making with
we
you.
all, yeah.
Now, we have an audience of people that love this. Oh, were you going to say something?
Oh, it just made me think about it, man. That this had nothing to do with the music. But when I came down there one time to do this thing, I drove by on your street, and I said, what the heck's different? I know something's different.
Where was this?
Down in, I come to do one of the things.
Oh, in Allen Park, in
Allen Park.
Michigan. Yeah.
And I come on, I said, what the heck? It's something different. Well, that guy had put a story on that house. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
That guy put a second story on that house. He was going to move somewhere else. Then he said, boy, this is better than what I was going to move to. And then he ended up putting a second story on that.
I'm trying to remember what house
it was on the right-hand side.
Yeah.
But that house, he put a second story on there, man.
That was a cozy little neighborhood.
Yeah, I remember going by and saying, hey, something different. I got to tell y'all this. And this is going to knock you for a roll of beans.
All right, go. We're all ears.
I was in Ludington here 2-3 weeks ago with Jazz Band 1. I rode up there with the band. Played at Ludington High School, and blah, blah, blah. And the place where we go eat dinner, and then we eat dinner, and then we go back to the high school, and they perform, you know. And then we come back to the place where we had dinner and have a jam session. And they had a set of drums in there, and we have a jam session. So while we were there, it's about 11:15, the end of the night, you know, the jam session and stuff there. I'm walking kind of away from the bandstand to the back of the club, and this guy and this lady comes up. And this lady says to me, I know you. And I said to her, yeah, I know you too. You're a nurse. She said, yeah, I am a nurse. Her husband's there. I have no idea how I knew she was a nurse. And I don't know how she knew me. And her husband said, well, have you been in the ER in Tennessee? You know, I said, no. I've been around Tennessee, but I ain't never been to Tennessee. That's where they've been living for years. They was in Ludington. And the lady said she knew me, and I knew her, and I knew she was a nurse. I don't have a clue how
this
I
day.
know she was a nurse, and we don't know how we knew each other, but she knew me, and I knew she was a nurse. And I've been racking my brain. I said, how in the world did I know she was a nurse?
Well, that's where you have to call in Rod Serling, dry up your lip, and say, submitted for your approval, Mr. Randy Gelispie. He was in Ludington, Michigan, and ended up in the darkest corners of the Twilight Zone.
I have no idea. It's the strangest thing.
That is
As a matter
deep.
of fact, her husband said, hey, give me your number, give me your number. We have got to stay in touch. Give me your number, I got his number right now. I'm trying to figure out, how in the world did I know she was a nurse? And how did
Psychic
she know
phenomena.
me? Just like, I know you. I said, yeah, I know you too. You're a nurse. Then once I said it, how did I know she was a nurse? I still haven't figured it out. Hey,
That's
Jeff,
deep.
I haven't figured it out, man. I swear I don't know. And how she knew me, I have no clue. I have no clue.
One other cozy little story I need to get in the books is, you remember the Hurricane Bar, famous organ club in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, I got a story to tell you.
And the story of when the Hurricane was no longer on Center Avenue. Great club, and I had got to hear McDuff and Georgie Benson and Lonnie Smith, and I played there myself, and I heard you and Gene there. Tell me the Hurricane, post-Hurricane Bar story, and then we'll wrap this bad boy up.
You mean after it was gone?
After it was gone.
Well, I was in Pittsburgh playing at the Rendezvous with Spanky.
In Homewood, yeah.
At Homewood. And so it was like this particular, it was Christmas time, New Year's Eve time. And it was 60 degrees in Pittsburgh that particular year. So I drove down to the Hill District and I pulled up in front of where the Hurricane used to be. And I stopped. My wife was with me. And I let the windows down, 60 degrees, I let the windows down. And I said to her, listen, listen. She said, huh? I said, listen, listen. She said, she looked around, said, what is it? And listen, listen, listen. She said, what's the matter? She said. I said, listen, can't you hear them guys swinging? The building is gone, but nothing there. But it used to be there. I said, can't you hear them cats swinging?
That deep.
She said, if
That's
you
right.
don't start this car up and get the hell out of here.
That's like the nurse, like the nurse from Tennessee.
She started laughing. She said, if that ain't the doggone thing. But, you know, it's like, if you go down there and stand on that corner right there, something gonna happen to you. If you just stand there, it had so much rhythm. But oh man, that place all you had to do to get on the bandstand, you gonna swing. Yeah. All you had to do was get on the bandstand. Boy, that you could.
Yeah, once you got the organ, because remember you had to put it
you
up
had to,
on
you
its
had to
end.
put the organ, pick it
and,
up, lift it over
it
the
was so
bar.
tedious and up over
and
a bar.
there's always somebody there to help you. You pick it up. And you had to turn it up on the edge. To
get it through that door, because it was like a double entrance.
Oh, but that place swung.
Do you know, I don't know if you recall that funny, silly show, Route 66, with George Maharis and Martin Milner. It was made around 1960.
Yeah, I remember that.
And they filmed it in different cities in America. They filmed an episode in Pittsburgh that Eartha Kitt was in, and it was a corny idea. This old black lady was dying, and she wanted to get these old Dixieland band guys together one more time, that kind of thing. And they actually filmed it in the interior of the Hurricane.
Wow.
Isn't that deep?
That's
you
deep.
can recognize, because wouldn't you, I mean, you know exactly how that place was designed. The
Yeah.
booths,
Matter of
the
fact-
bar, the
matter of
kitchen in the
fact,
back.
I got a picture sitting on my office desk with my wife and I standing in front of the kitchen door.
No, that's so
Hurricane.
deep. Yeah, the Hurricane, that was like the original Yankee Stadium of organ clubs.
Yeah.
You know, we've got, before we wrap
You know,
this thing up.
which name was, I played with Larry Young at the Crawford Grill and Groove Home. They were one of the few organ players that went in the Crawford Grill.
That's right. That was the piano club. That's
house.
right.
Yeah.
And then I've got pictures of when they had those little beige Wurlitzer electric pianos. And if you hit a note too hard, you had to be like
But they
a
had the baby grand up there, though.
surgeon. They did,
They had the
briefly.
big grand up
And
there.
that little bandstand was so tiny.
Yeah, but
And when I was a kid, having no money, I'd sit outside. Remember, I'd stand outside by that
By that
door. It was
door,
like a
that door
storm
right there.
door.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
put
yeah,
your
yeah.
ear up against there and got that. Anyway, we have some various jazz fans and Randy Gelispie fans here. And before we wrap it up, since this is not 35 millimeter film that we're consuming, if you guys have any, I've tried to cover just about, I mean, we could talk here for thousands of years about all of these great stories and all the great cats Randy's played with and the times we've had over the years. If anybody, because all these people just utterly adore you and love you, Jeff Shoup, great drummer, Ryan Potasek, great drummer, Wu Bean, great singer of Chinese funk and blues, and Jim Alfredson, our great organ player and producer and operator. If you guys have any questions that I might not have covered while we have this monumental man here, you're going to talk about it.
Let me say this and put this in the word. Jim Alfredson is one of the most underrated organ players
Oh, no
in
question.
the country.
No question.
I'll say that. I want the world to know that.
And he can make an old, mean, vicious touch Fender Rhodes feel like a DX7. The guy's a technical genius. He's a cameraman. I mean, but if anybody's got anything to say or ask, by all means, I tried to cover the basic gamut because, like I said, we could be here for years and years and years. Yeah, anybody got questions? Just tilt the camera towards Jeff Shoup.
Huh? Oh, God. Yes. I have to get this in. Oh, I forgot about that. Listen, you had to get this one in.
Give me the clip. I'll put it back on.
Back in, the 50s. Are we rolling?
Clip it back
We rolling still?
Yeah.
Okay.
Back in the 50s, at the Tijuana Club in Cleveland, Ohio, I was playing there with a great saxophone player who could have went on the road, Jimmy Knoll. Bobby Reeves had been on the road, but he had come back to Akron, bass player. And Carl Carter, they called him Ace Carter, a super, super, super piano player who ended up with the Basie band for a while. Anyway, we were playing at this club, and the first week, the lady named Catherine, who owned the club, matter of fact, Bird played at this club, Tijuana. She got a citation. She couldn't serve liquor for a week, but we still played. So this particular night, might have been a Wednesday or Thursday, we started playing this tune, Cheek to Cheek. And something supernatural happened on that tune, and we've never been able to figure out what happened, but we hit such a swinging groove on that tune that we couldn't take it out. And it was something over my hands and something on everybody. Everybody felt the same thing. It was like I wasn't in control of what I was doing. Nobody was in control. This is the scary part about it. And we could not even take the tune out. It was like every time we tried to take it out, Jimmy would start soloing again on the horn. Then Carl would take another solo. Bobby would then we'd trade. And it kept going, and we hit such a terrific, it was like almost unbearable. It was so spiritual. And when we finally took the tune out, it was just as if we had started to play the tune, cheek to cheek. And so we took a break. Nobody said a word. Everybody looked at each other. Nobody said a word. The next night when we come there, I think Bobby said, "Man, what happened on Cheek to Cheek last night?" Nobody knew. Nobody knew. It was like almost eerie. It was like, something happened, but you didn't want to talk about it because you didn't believe in ghosts, you didn't believe in spirits, you didn't believe in none of that stuff. I mean, you do, but I mean, something happened, and we couldn't. And till this day, Jimmy was about 7, 8 years, maybe 8, 9 years older than me. All of them were older than me. Back then, I was always the youngest person in the band back then. Anyway, Jimmy just passed away here about 3 months ago. He was 90-some years old. He just passed away. He's the only one. But now, check this out. Years later, I went on the road, just years later, and I'd go through Akron to see my relatives. And so, depending on what much time I had, I'd go by Jimmy's house. And I hadn't seen him maybe 10, 12 years. And I go by his house, boom, 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 boom. And I go to the door, and his wife said, "Oh, Randy, Jimmy's here. Randy said, Jimmy, Randy." He hugged me. "Hey, man, you remember that tune, Cheek to Cheek?" This was like years later. We went by Bobby Reeves' house. The car had moved. Went by Bobby Reeves' house. "Bobby, someone here to see you." Blah, 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 blah. "Randy, hey, man, how you doing? How you doing?" "Hey, man, you remember that tune, Cheek to Cheek?" Now, here's the funny thing about it. This is 30-some years later. Carl Carter is in Cleveland. Piano player from Flint. What's the piano player?
Roger.
Huh? Roger Jones.
Yeah.
Roger's going to Oberlin. This was like 30 years later. Roger's going to Oberlin. And he told me one time he had to sub for Rick Rowe at the Creole Gallery. And he said to me, "Randy, you knew Carl Carter. He knew you." He asked me, he says, "Carl, I saw him down in when I was going to Oberlin." And he asked me, "Did I know you?" And I told him, "Yes." He said, and he told me to ask you about the Tijuana and Cheek to Cheek. This is like 30-some years later.
That's amazing.
I said, "He told you about that?" So Roger Jones didn't know what it was. And I explained it to him. This is 30-some years later. He told Roger Jones asked Randy about the Tijuana and Cheek to Cheek. Listen, it was unbelievable what happened on it. And I told Jimmy, I don't want to visit that no more because it was scary to me. I knew something was going
Too
on.
bad it wasn't recorded.
Nobody was in control. I wish I'd had a recording of that to see what it sounded like. But the same thing happened to McCoy Tyner, similar to that. Because the last time that band played together, Train, McCoy, Alvin, and Jimmy Garrison, Teddy Harris had a little recording. He was recording that nobody knew. And Teddy said the tune that was playing just stopped. Just stopped. It hit such a high, it just stopped. Everybody stopped. Up.
At the same time, they
At the
stopped.
same time.
Do you know
It's
what the
just stopped.
song was? What the
No,
title was?
but
Okay,
Teddy
just-
got it on tape. And Alvin Jones said, "Is that it?" And Train said, "It better be." He got that on tape. Check this out. Teddy played it for McCoy some years later, 15, 20 years later. He played McCoy come to Detroit with his own band. He played it for McCoy. Teddy said, McCoy said, "Who playing piano?" It was him. He didn't know he was playing piano. He said, "Who's playing piano?" "That's you." "What?" And Teddy played to me. I don't know what happened to that stuff, and his kids. I don't know what happened to all that music, Teddy's music. Man, but that happened kind of to McCoy. But I told Jimmy, I don't want to visit that. So I asked Jimmy. Jimmy just passed away about maybe 2-3 months ago. But all these times, we stayed close, And I asked Jimmy sometime, I asked him, "Man, when the last time you played Cheek to Cheek?" He said, "I never played it again."
That is
He
deep.
asked me, "When the last time you played it?" I said, "I didn't call it, but Andrew Spate called it one time, and I didn't tell him what was happening, but I didn't want to play it either. But I played it, but I didn't never tell him what was going on. But I felt funny playing it. I didn't never get to it was so strange, Bill, and I don't want to visit that avenue no more. No, it just when
You
something
guys
like,
are just too deep.
oh man, blah blah blah. I don't want to mess with that ever again. No, if I ain't gonna ever call that tune, so if you want to play it, you can play it, but I ain't gonna call it. Jimmy never played it again. But I tell you what he did do, he messing with me. He called me up one time, and I got my machine come on in, and he did this with his saxophone. Shoup-a-dee-doo, shoup-a-dee-doo, shoup-a-dee-doo-dee-doo-dee-doo-dee. I said, "Ah! Don't do that!"
That is
He
deep.
just played that part of the melody. I called him and said, "Why you do that, Jimmy?" He started laughing. But he said we never actually played the tune ever again. Man, that was some eerie stuff, man. God, that was amazing stuff.
Well,
I don't like
that
I don't like
McCoy
stuff
story
like,
is pretty deep too.
I don't like stuff like that. Huh?
That McCoy story is deep too. I heard
McCoy,
he had
yeah.
some kind of a stroke or something, and I've seen recent things he did on YouTube, and it's just, that eighth note, what I call the helicopter gunship licks and all that vicious stuff. He's not playing that way anymore. It's very sad. I think he had some kind of stroke. It's very hard to get information about him. I think he's been whoever's maybe looking after him is keeping it very, very private.
Yeah.
There was a very mediocre, in my opinion, video or documentary about Coltrane recently called Chasing the Train, I think, something like that. And McCoy made one little comment about that. It's as if, and I've heard that he has Alzheimer's, which my dad had for 10 years. And by the way, did you ever get to record in my father's studio? Because George Benson recorded there.
No, I
Billy
didn't.
Strayhorn, Errol
No.
Garner, Eddie Jefferson, some
No,
doo-wop groups, some bad people. But
No,
I
I
guess
didn't.
I guess that era, when we hooked up, and by then my dad had the Alzheimer's pretty bad, and the business was pretty much
I know
over.
your dad used to rent all them organs out.
Yeah.
I knew that.
Yeah.
I knew that.
Yeah, to the hurricane. And
And
there was that
you
other
know-
guy, Joe Westray. Remember him?
Oh yeah. George, I've been knowing George since he come out of high school. He used to play at Mason's.
Yeah, I remember that. Right
Yeah.
across the street from
Yeah,
the grill.
from Crawford
yeah.
Grill. Yeah.
We had some good hangs in Pittsburgh when he had Lonnie Smith in his group.
Ooh-wee.
Those guys were killing.
I had some pleasant moments. Well, I got some pleasant moments a lot of places though. I don't know.
We go out and go up to Boykins. Remember Boykins? We get ribs up at Boykins right up the street from the grill.
Guess what? Boykins, I remember when Donald Byrd come through there, and with Donald Byrd and Pepper Adams, and guess who was playing drums with him? Joe Dukes.
Oh, that's very deep.
Yeah, and they come in there to get some ribs or something. They were getting ready to catch a train to somewhere.
That's deep.
Yeah,
Joe Dukes.
But years later, I played with Donald in Detroit. Donald Byrd, man, I went down there, we had a rehearsal, blah, 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 blah. And the next night with the gig, he ain't played no tune we rehearsed.
Oh, that happens now and then.
He ain't played not
You
one.
work on that
He
stuff
just,
and then
I
you
thought
end up-
maybe he gonna call the first one, let's play songs. Okay, boom, boom. Then we'll get to the tunes we rehearsed. Next thing you know, he called another. And next thing you know, the gig is, I said, Donald, man, we ain't playing none of this. Oh, man, that's right, we didn't do it. God, dog, man, what's up with that? Man, I forgot, man. Oh, how you gonna forget? Yeah, he just started calling tunes, man.
You've heard him on those Prestige Coltrane records where they do those giant long 20-minute blues with Red Garland and Paul Chandler. I mean, this is some of the greatest
Oh,
music.
yeah, man.
That stuff, ooh. Does anybody have any comments or questions? Because we could be here for thousands of years. I don't want to hold you up anymore, Randy, except to thank you so much for participating in this and telling us your
You're welcome so
history.
much.
And we just covered a little smidge, just little particles of it because it goes on and on. I mean, just our history in Pittsburgh, some of those goofy places we played,
man. Boy,
the stuff
listen,
we went through.
Ooh, I had some pleasant moments in Pittsburgh. Boom, de boom.
And lest we forget, Dale.
Dale. Yeah, but you didn't know Marcia.
I didn't know Marcia, but. And in the words of Chuck Todd, gentlemen, we're going to have to leave it there. If it's Sunday, it's Meet the Press. I didn't know Marcia, but I knew Dale.
This was years, before you.
Going to get into tongue-telling baseball parties.